Good evening and welcome to Healing the Divide. I'm Lucas and I'm your host for this episode. We will never bring you news or politics for the sake of discussion. Our responsibility is the bigger picture. The subject of this episode will be presented by the Throwback team. Andrew, our early nobleman, and Wyatt, our civil rights activist. This very important subject draws on a point the author Robert Whitney made in the book, Florida is where DeSantis' presidential dream goes to die. The author noted that all the major issues that have developed in this country have always been disputed between white Americans. From the Native Americans, to slaves, to immigration, etc. Let's listen to them, please.
Good evening, and welcome. I'm Andrew. As the book noted, issues were always divided between the good guys and the bad guys.
We published the book, Florida is where DeSantis' presidential dream goes to die in 2023. In it we discussed the fact that most issues of consequence in this country have been divided between white Americans. There is always the one side that seeks power, racism, and oppression, and those who seek justice, equal rights, and decency for all Americans. What you are witnessing in this video is an example of how far white Americans who promote evil will go. So much so as to plow down a bunch of people with a car to insist on being allowed to promote hate and white supremacy. And you also see how far white Americans who seek only good for their fellow man and woman will go to support those values. They have placed their lives in danger on many occasions standing up for what they believe. Now more and more people who are on that other side are coming to see clearly and are leaving Trump and his evil ilk in droves.
The author also pointed out that this struggle is like what you see in movies and comic book hero stories. The villain is always busy wreaking havoc and causing tremendous harm, and the good guys, the heroes, are always on their heels trying to defend against the evil. A great deal of harm is usually caused before the heroes finally decide they need to take the fight to the villains and go on the offensive. This is something white Americans who stand for good still have not caught on to and acted on. They still simply respond to, write about, report about, and complain about the actions of the bad guys.
Americans who stand for freedom, justice, and equality for all need to understand a couple of things. 1. They have always been the only ones who can get the final results against the bad guys. 2. Black Americans and all other marginalized groups in this country will always stand up with them against the bad guys. We outnumber them together. But there is something else white Americans who stand for good need to consider. They have to overcome their tendency of taking their lead from the bad guys. For example, the bad guys come up with an invented issue and the good guys waste their time chasing or trying to combat every claim and waste time putting out fake fires that don't need their attention. White Americans, the good guys, also have to grow out of the tendency of only listening to each other. The bad guys say they are pro-life, so the good guys let that stand and call them pro-life even though they oppose everything that aids the child once it is born. The bad guys borrowed the word woke from black people, gave it a derogatory meaning, and then the good guys, instead of talking to black people or looking up the actual meaning of woke, just set about trying to prove that woke according to what the bad guys have done with the word is really a good thing and means something it was never meant to mean.
White Americans who stand for good and decency in this country have to remember that they are not ever going to feel the real urgency of the times or the moments we find ourselves in, because when everything is said and done, any of them can choose to go the way of the bad guys and be accepted. Also, while white Americans fear losing democracy, they don't realize that "save our democracy" is not a phrase that triggers a response from black Americans. Every evil black people have experienced since being in America has been under democracy. We have a video discussing that later.
So just consider some of the people who could actually be making a difference in this fight among those who are busy reporting. How many people with podcasts and YouTube channels who know the law and politics and could be using their time in secret think tanks and ways to counter the bad guys, by thinking a few moves ahead instead of constantly reacting to and reporting on the evil? This is what we wanted to share, for now.
Thank you for giving us your time. We presented these points in video because we didn't want to ask anyone to read one of our extremely long posts on social media. Please like and subscribe to our channel if you can relate to what we are trying to say and do. And please share the video. For all of us at Healing the Divide, I'm Lucas saying good night, thank you, and we can win this.